All right, so today we're going deep, really deep, into some seriously dark territory.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the minds of serial killers.
Always a fascinating subject.
It is. It's unsettling, but also, I think, really important to try to understand, right?
Absolutely. I mean, how can we hope to stop these kinds of horrific crimes if we don't understand what drives them?
Exactly. And that's where our source material comes in. The Killer Across the Table by Johnny Douglas.
Douglas. One of the pioneers of criminal profiling at the FBI.
Exactly. The guy who basically invented the whole idea of getting inside a killer's head to figure out how they operate.
He interviewed some of the most notorious killers in history.
Yeah, and in the book, he goes through like his process, his methods, but also what he learned from these encounters.
Yeah. It's not just about catching the bad guys. It's about figuring out the why.
The why. And in this deep dive, we're going to focus on 4 cases from the book, each one really different, kind of highlighting a different aspect of what makes these individuals tick.
Okay, yeah. I'm ready to dive in.
So let's start with Joseph McGowan. Now, this guy was a science teacher.
Seemed totally normal.
Right.
Mhm.
Totally normal. Lived in a quiet neighborhood, well-respected. And then, boom, he murders this young girl who lived nearby.
Ugh. Classic case of the hidden predator.
Yeah. And it's so disturbing because it makes you realize that anyone could be capable of this.
Well, and that's what Douglas emphasizes, right? You can't always judge a book by its cover.
No. And McGowan was like a master of deception.
Yeah, he really cultivated this image of like this upstanding citizen to hide his true nature.
So it wasn't just about blending in, it was about actively creating a false persona.
Yeah. And that makes them even more dangerous, right? Because
Yeah.
they're able to operate under the radar for so long.
Right, they can gain people's trust, get close to potential victims.
Exactly. So what Douglas really tries to do is teach us how to look beyond those superficial impressions.
Okay, but how do we do that? I mean, is there any way to really spot these hidden predators?
Well, it's not easy, but Douglas says one of the key things is to pay attention to inconsistencies.
Inconsistencies.
Yeah, like if someone's words don't match their actions or if their stories don't quite add up.
Oh, I see. Like little red flags that something's not quite right.
Yeah. And it's about trusting your gut instincts too. If something feels off, it probably is.
That's kind of scary though, right? Because it means we have to be suspicious of everyone.
Well, not suspicious exactly, more like aware. Just, keeping our eyes open.
That's okay, so awareness is key. But let's move on to the next case because this one is even more disturbing in a way.
Yeah.
Donald Harvey, the so-called angel of death.
Oh man, that guy. A hospital orderly who murdered like dozens of patients.
Dozens. And it's that violation of trust that makes it so horrifying.
Right, absolutely. You go to a hospital to get better, to be cared for, and this guy is like preying on the most vulnerable people.
And he was able to get away with it for so long.
Well, think about the environment. A hospital is kind of chaotic, right? Lots of people coming and going.
Yeah, and people are like literally dying all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easier for someone like Harvey to blend in, to make his crimes seem like, just another unfortunate incident.
But he wasn't just randomly killing people, was he?
Right.
He had a method, a pattern.
Right. Douglas talks about how Harvey was obsessed with control, with having power over life and death.
Like a god complex almost.
Yeah, something like that. And his crimes were very deliberate, almost ritualistic.
It's chilling to think about. And it makes you wonder, how do you prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, it's tricky, but Douglas argues that psychological assessments are crucial, especially in healthcare settings.
So not just checking someone's background, but actually trying to assess their mental state.
Exactly. Looking for any signs of potential instability or, unhealthy obsessions.
Okay, so we've got hidden predators, we've got abusers of trust, and now we come to, I think, maybe the most shocking case of all. Todd Kohlhepp, a successful real estate agent, charismatic, well-liked.
Yeah, the guy everyone thought was a totally normal dude.
And then it turns out he's a serial killer. And not just that, he had a woman chained up in a storage container on his property.
It's mind-blowing, right? Like, how can someone live such a double life?
And be so good at it.
Yeah.
Kohlhepp was able to fool everyone.
He was a master manipulator, knew exactly how to present himself to the world.
So how did Douglas even begin to crack this guy? I mean, he must have been a tough nut to crack.
Well, Douglas was brilliant at understanding what made these killers tick. And with Kohlhepp, he realized that the key was his ego, his need for control.
So he played to that during the interrogation.
Yeah. He basically allowed Kohlhepp to, like, direct the conversation to feel like he was in charge.
And that made him confess.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? But it just shows how understanding the criminal psychology can be the most powerful weapon.
So like you're playing a game with their mind.
In a way, yeah. And the stakes are incredibly high.
Okay, so we've seen how complex these cases can be. But let's move on to our final case, because this one brings in another layer of complexity. Charles Jack Spann. He murdered his neighbor in a fit of rage.
And he had a history of mental illness, right?
Right, so it makes you question the role of mental illness in violent crime.
Yeah. Is it the cause or just a contributing factor?
It's a tough question. And Douglas doesn't give any easy answers.
No, he's very clear that it's not a simple cause and effect relationship.
But he does say that mental illness can make people more susceptible to violence, especially if it's combined with other factors.
Right, like in Spann's case, he had these personal grievances, these deep-seated resentments.
And his mental health issues may have made it harder for him to control his anger, his
Yeah.
impulses.
Exactly. So it was a combination of things that led to the tragedy.
So what's the takeaway here? I mean, how do we deal with cases where mental illness is involved?
Douglas stresses the need for careful evaluation, for looking at the whole picture.
So not just assuming that mental illness equals violence.
Right. Because that's not always the case.
Okay, so we've gone through these 4 cases, and each one is so different, so disturbing in its own way.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming.
But if there's one thing I've learned from Douglas's work, it's that there's no such thing as a typical serial killer.
Right. They come from all walks of life. They have different motivations, different psychological profiles.
So there's no easy answer, no magic formula for understanding them.
No, but Douglas's book gives us some tools, some insights that can help us start to make sense of this darkness.
And maybe, hopefully, prevent future tragedies.
Yeah. Because that's the ultimate goal, right? To stop these crimes before they happen.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a heavy but really important deep dive. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. And for our listeners out there, if you're interested in learning more about this stuff, I highly recommend checking out The Killer Across the Table by John E. Douglas. It's a fascinating, if sometimes disturbing read. And yeah, stay safe out there. Be aware. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time.
See